Khatin Hazrat, we have a very distinguished personality among us here from Mississauga, Ontario. ہمارے محترم ڈاکٹر عبداللہ راجہ صاحب ہماری دعوت پر تشریف لائے ہیں. بہت شکریہ ادا کرتا ہوں. اللہ تعالیٰ نے دین و دنیا کے اندر بہت نوازا ہے ان کو. میڈیکل ڈاکٹر ہیں اور دینی طور پر ایک زبردست نہ صرف عالم ہیں، مقرر ہیں، نوجوانوں کے اوپر بہت کام کر رہے ہیں. میرے رہبر و رہنما شیخ الاسلام ڈاکٹر محمد طاہر القادری سے بڑا ان کو فیض حاصل ہے، ان سے سند بھی حاصل ہے. تو انشاءاللہ یہ آپ کے سامنے بغیر تاخیر کے پیش کر رہا ہوں، دعوت دے رہا ہوں. جزاک اللہ.
السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ. نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الأمين المكين الكريم الرؤوف الرحيم. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل إن كنتم تحبون الله فاتبعوني يحببكم الله ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم والله غفور رحيم. صدق الله العظيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم وصل علیہ. ساری صدیوں پہ جو بھاری ہے وہ لمحہ ملتا، کاش سرکار دو عالم کا زمانہ ملتا. آپ کو دیکھتا میں مکے سے ہجرت کرتے، آپ کا نقش قدم آپ کا رستہ ملتا. اور آپ کو دیکھتا طائف میں دعائیں دیتے، یوں میرے صبر و تحمل کو سلیقہ ملتا. آپ کے سامنے رکھ دیتا میں سب کچھ لا کر، آپ کے سامنے رکھ دیتا میں سب کچھ لا کر، نصرت دین کے لیے جب بھی اشارہ ملتا. وہ اپنا گھر بار لٹا دیتا تو اس کے بدلے حب سرکار مدینے کا خزینہ ملتا. آپ کے پیچھے کھڑے ہو کر نمازیں پڑھتا، آپ کے قدموں کے پیچھے مجھے سجدہ ملتا. اور بھول جاتا میں کسی طاق میں رکھ کر آنکھیں، آپ کو دیکھتے رہنے کا بہانہ ملتا. آپ کی طرح بٹھاتا میں اسی شانوں پر، راہ میں آپ کے جب کوئی نواسا ملتا. حشر تک میری یوں ہی غلامی قائم رہتی، میری ہر نسل کو فخر یہ بھی ورثہ ملتا. My dear brothers and sisters, it is with the profound majesty and the glory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we are gathered in a country that is designated non-Muslim, but even here we have the ashiqs of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi. Even here we have individuals who know, love and have adab for beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. 28%. It's a very interesting percentage. ISNA, I'm sure you've all heard about it. ISNA is quite a big field in terms of Islam within the West. Regardless of their aqidah, they've done a great amount of work in the collection of statistics for Muslims. And this specific statistic is mind-boggling for me. 28% they found of the youth, if they're asked a simple question on the street, 28% of youth would refrain from answering the question. The question is simple. They asked, why? The question was, are you a Muslim? 28% of children, youth, my age and perhaps a little younger, they said, we do not wish to answer this question. Why? Because they've lost the ruh of Islam, the spirit of Islam, and the spirit of Islam begins at the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. I'll go one further, another statistic from McMaster University, 77%. There's an MSA wherever you go, Muslim Student Association, in every university. McMaster University back in 2012, I was part of this study. We collected all of the Jum'ah students together. And as they were leaving Jum'ah, they had a little test to fill out, a small one-question test. The question was, what is the meaning of Allahu Akbar? And it was multiple choice. For example, Allah is the greatest. Number 2, Allah is the last. Number 3, Allah is merciful. Number 4, Allah revealed the Quran. 77% of the youth who came to Jum'ah got the answer wrong. 77%. And my dear brothers, I often teach children all the time. My very first question for them is simple. What is the meaning of the word Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam? Some of our elders may know. I implore you to ask your children this question today. What is the meaning of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam? Most of the children don't even know the meaning of the name of their beloved Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. My dear brothers, that's why I worry. Though we have such grand mahafil, even in Windsor, in London, in Toronto, in Mississauga, in Oakville, in Vancouver, in Calgary, in Miami, in Los Angeles, grand mawlids are happening all across the globe. But wherever I go, it seems like the spirit of Mawlid has been sucked out. We are sitting in a mahfil of Milad. We're speaking about Allah knows what. We're sitting in a mahfil of Milad without even knowing and understanding the adab of sitting in a mahfil of Milad. Understand what adab is. And if you understand where adab is and what adab is, muhabbat will fester itself inside of you. Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam has just completed the hijrah. He's just come, it's a very famous story. He's let go of the lagam of the camel. Wherever the camel sits, that's where Masjid-Un-Nabi will be built. Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, he noticed one thing. He noticed that Rasulullah had a little piece of luggage with him that he placed on the side. Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, using a great amount of wisdom and hikmah, he went and picked up the pieces of luggage and placed them like this. Once the camel rested, the companions around, the Ansar, within Madinatul Munawwara, they began to debate amongst themselves. Until Masjid-Un-Nabi is built, where will Rasulullah stay? Who will have the amazing honor of housing Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam? Not a lot of people know this, and you should. Because this is where you learn adab from the ashab who exemplified adab. Where did they learn adab from? There was no hukm, there was no Quran, there was no sunnah. They learned adab from muhabba of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. Who did they see? They saw ra'aytu rajulan ظاهر الوضاء أبلج الوجه حسن الخلق لم تعبه ثجلا ولم تضربه سعلا حسين وسيم قسيم. They saw walking والضحى. They saw the zulfi of والليل إذا سجى. They saw the footsteps of لا أقسم بهذا البلد. They saw the clothes of يا أيها المدثر. They saw the blanket of يا أيها المزمل. They saw the chest of ألم نشرح لك صدرك. They saw the back of ووضعنا عنك وزرك. They saw the risalat of Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. They had no choice but to love Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. For them, muhabba came first, then came adab. We, however, cannot see Rasulullah, so we must do adab then muhabba will come by itself. So Abu Ayyub al-Ansari has collected the luggage of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah is noticing that the environment is getting hot. There seems to be debates and arguments between the Ansar. So Rasulullah, his first real example of Rasulullah being the president of a nation, how is he going to? He doesn't want to hurt all of the chieftains of the Ansar of Medina. So he says a profound statement. He says, an individual goes where his luggage is. And Abu Ayyub al-Ansari already had his luggage. So then he began to open, Bakhin, Bakhin. It is a great celebration. Rasulullah is coming to my house. He comes, runs home. He says, oh my wife, prepare the house, prepare the room of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So his wife asks a very interesting question. Should we place Rasulullah upstairs or should we place him downstairs? So he thinks to himself, Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, Rasulullah has just traveled from Makkah on footstep. Just traveled all the way from Makkah. Why would I have him walk more steps? So quickly prepare the room downstairs. So his wife prepares the room downstairs. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam enters the room. He goes and he sits inside of his room and they speak about whatever they speak. Now it is time for Rasulullah to rest. It is time for Abu Ayyub al-Ansari to rest. So Abu Ayyub al-Ansari begins to walk the steps to go upstairs. And before he reaches the top, he stops. Before he reaches the top, he stops. And he thinks to himself, how could Abu Ayyub al-Ansari step on top of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam? What if my footstep gets placed above the beloved face of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam? So he comes running down the stairs. Now the door is closed. Abu Ayyub al-Ansari thinks to himself, if I knock, I will disturb him. So what can I do? Whatever, perhaps he's already gone to sleep. So he sits down and he begins to read durood and salam upon Rasulullah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina wa Mawlana Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina wa Mawlana Muhammad wa barik wa sallim wa salli alayhi. From inside, Rasulullah says, Abu Ayyub, what is it that you need? Abu Ayyub, muadban, respectfully, says, Ya Rasulullah, you are the Khatamun-Nabiyyin, you are Habibullah. I am simply Abu Ayyub al-Ansari. How can I sleep above you, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam? So then Rasulullah picked up, Abu Ayyub picked up the remainder, the beddings of Rasulullah, and Rasulullah slept up. Abu Ayyub al-Ansari slept downstairs. This is the adab that they had, my dear brothers. There is no verse in the Quran, there is no hadith, nothing you will find. Where did this stem from? They saw the face of Wadduha. They were bound by adab. They were bound by adab. My dear brothers and my dear sisters, inshallah, it's almost time for Maghrib Salah, so I won't take much of your time, but it is absolutely imperative that if you want your children to have muhabba of Rasulullah, you teach them adab at home. Muhabba is a very interesting word, by the way. Do you know where muhabba comes from? It's an Arabic word. The root word of muhabba, it comes from tahabba. And tahabba in Arabic means seed. Tahabba in Arabic means seed. So the ulama, they say, in order for you to love anything, you must have it seeded in something first. The seed in this ayah that are recited for you, if you wish to love Allah, then seed yourself in the orders of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. And my dear brothers, if a seed is not nurtured with love, if a seed is not nurtured with adab, it does not grow into a tree. And if it will not grow into a tree, then how can you say that you have muhabba of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam? Shaykh al-Islam Huzur Sayyidi, he speaks, he says, the last question in the grave, what is it? It's a very simple question. Who is this? inshallah, all of our lips will say, Ya Rasulullah. Perhaps on that day we will get the same basharat as the Ansar in Medina when they read Tala al-Badru alayna. Perhaps instead of saying this is Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, our spiritual self will wake up in barzakh and we will start reciting Tala al-Badru alayna. Then Huzur Sayyidi Shaykh al-Islam, he says something very interesting. He says that's one aspect of it. Here's another aspect of it. How lucky would that individual be that when the angels ask, who is this, to the person in the grave, Rasulullah himself says, why do you ask him who I am? Let me tell you who he is. Let me tell you who he is. That's when muhabba will come to light. There is a Sahabi, Dhul Yadan. He had hands that were very long. So Rasulullah gave him a nickname, Dhul Yadan. Those with them with the two hands. So Rasulullah said, this is in Muslim by the way. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is leading salah. 4 rakah salah, he read end salam after 2 rakahs. Dhul Yadan, he's a little bit elderly. All of the other, Abu Bakr and Umar and Usman and Ali, and all of them are seated in the first saf. Silent. Dhul Yadan stands up. Ya Rasulullah, did Allah make you read 2 raka'ah instead of 4? So Rasulullah, now with a puzzled look, he looks to Abu Bakr and Umar and the Sahaba in the first saf. He says, oh my companions, how many raka'ah did I read? The companions, they say, Allah and His Rasul know best. Allah and His Rasul know best. We don't know whether it was 2 or 4. Azan to azal se tere ishq ka tarana bani, namaz to tere nazare ka ik bahana bani. We don't know what happened. All we know is we read salah behind you, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And what a namaz. This is one story. Another story, Sahih Bukhari. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is reading salah. All of a sudden, fard salah he's leading. All of a sudden he walks a few steps, extends his hand, retracts his hand, goes back in the same position, and he completes his salah. After completing the salah, the companions, they come up to Rasulullah. They say, Ya Rasulullah, we saw you do something that we've never seen you do before. What was that? He says, I lifted my eyesight and I saw Jannah. I lifted my eyesight and I saw Jannah. So I walked a few steps to get to Jannah. Then I extended my hand to grab a branch of a grape from Jannah. Then I pulled my hand back and walked. My dear brothers, your Rasul with one eye gets to Jannah. With a few steps walks into Jannah. And with just an extension of the hand can touch and break off branches from Jannah. He is your Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. Last little thing before I end. The youth, they like to say, our Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, na'udhu billah, astaghfirullah. He's just like us. He had wives just like us. He had children just like us. He wore clothes just like us. These individuals have neither muhabba or adab. Your kalima is la ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. Even the kalima of Rasulullah is not the same as your kalima. The kalima of our Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam was not la ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. His kalima was what? La ilaha illallah, ana Rasulullah. If your kalima is not the same kalima as your Rasul, how can we say he is just like us? With one sight he gets to Jannah and you say he's just like you. With a few steps he crosses Sidratul Muntaha and you say he's just like you. He can see and speak with Allah directly and you say he's just like you. Where else in the Quran will you find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala having qasam on the clothes of your Nabi, Ya ayyuhal muddassir? Where else will you find this? hub and love and muhabba and respect that Allah has for Rasulullah. Even Allah knows Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and so the entire Quran, maghz Quran, ruh iman, jane deen, haste hubbe rahmatul lil alameen, says Allama Iqbal. My dear brothers, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted us from the ummati and from the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. Last 2 minutes, one final story comes to my mind, and it's a very beautiful story and it's a very funny story. So I'll leave you with this just before Salatul Maghrib to give you some khushu in your behavior, because some of you are seated here. I do not even wish that you would come to the hospital in this. I've seen sicker patients than you with a smile on their face. There is a companion, elderly companion. And elderly people, I have an elderly father, perhaps you know grandparents, they don't really care about this world anymore. They're ready to meet Allah. So this companion was in a similar state. He says that I'm seated in a very narrow street, and this street is so small that it's been reserved for women. Only women can cross in this street. But this companion forgets. And he sits there on the ground one day. Rasulullah is walking with some companions one day, and he notices this elderly companion seated in this small section of Madinatul Munawwara, made specially and specifically for women. Rasulullah goes into Jalal. Oh my companion, what are you doing there in a street reserved for women? The companion, he begins to panic. The Jalal of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. It was said that when Rasulullah walked, his eyes were always on the ground. When Rasulullah ever raised his eyes, there was no one that could meet the gaze of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. The Jalal of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So the companion, he blurts out, he speaks out the first thing that comes into his mind. Ya Rasulullah, I was searching for my camel. Then he grabs his forehead. I don't own a camel. What have I said? And who have I said it to? Thinks the companion. Rasulullah understands what has just happened. So he smiles. And he says, oh my elderly companion, whenever you find your camel, let me know. Whenever you find your camel, let me know. Now the companion begins to think, where am I going to find a camel that I don't own? He says that from that day forward, whenever I would meet Rasulullah in Milad-Un-Nabi, in the streets of Medina, wherever I would meet him, Rasulullah would always ask me, oh my Sahabi, have you found your camel? And he says, whenever he would ask me, every time I'd be embarrassed and ashamed. What did I say? Why did I say it? So he says, I began to attend Milad-Un-Nabi less and less. I would reach at the end of Iqamah, and as soon as Salam was done, I would run out because I was feeling embarrassed amongst my companions. The other ashab were making fun of me. I didn't want to be embarrassed in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this companion, he says, one day I heard Rasulullah is out on an expedition. He says, I haven't read Nawafil in Milad-Un-Nabi in so long. Today I'm going to pray and pray and pray. So he says, I go and I begin to read Salat and Nawafil Salah, 2 rakahs I begin to read. He says, all of a sudden, I smell the smell of Nubuwwah. I smell the smell of Nubuwwah. And out of the corner of my eye, I notice Rasulullah has seated himself, waiting for me to end Salah. So in Salah, he says, you and I, we all have thoughts in our mind. What am I going to say the boss tomorrow? We're about to pray Maghrib. Think about how many times your thoughts go away from Allah about when the food will be ready tonight. Think about that. So this companion was saying, Nabi is there. The other companions are here. It's going to be embarrassing. I cannot do anything. So he says, I began to read all of the Quran that I knew. I read and I read and I read. But Quran is finite. It has to end. So he says, then I go into ruku. Subhana Rabbi al-Azim, Subhana Rabbi al-Azim, Subhana Rabbi al-Azim, Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. I read in ruku until my back began to hurt, and then I stood up. Then I went into sujood until my hands began to hurt. But then I had to go into tashahud. And after every harkat and every action, I would look. Rasulullah is still seated. He says, I get to the final durood that I have to read before ending salah. And as I'm reading, I'd begin to think, namaz is about to end. Rasulullah is still seated. He will ask me about my camel. So he says, I make an intention. As soon as I say, Assalamu alaikum, Assalamu alaikum, I will stand up, Allahu Akbar, and begin the next rak'ah. How long is Rasulullah going to stay there? He's a minister, he's a president, he's a scholar, he's a commander, he's the Nabi, he is the Rasul. He has so many duties. Why would he wait for an elderly companion to finish his salah? So he says that's exactly what happened. Assalamu alaikum, Assalamu alaikum. Stands up, Allah. Rasulullah speaks out. Oh my companion, today you can read 100 nawafil, but I will meet with you today. Today you can read 100 nawafil, but I will meet with you today. So he says, mid takbir, I place my hands defeated. Now I'm looking at the feet of Rasulullah. Rasulullah is looking at me. I don't have the jurrat to lift my eyes to look upon the jalal and the beauty of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So Rasulullah walks towards him and he says to his companion, oh my companion, what kind of friendship is this? What kind of companionship is this? You don't come to visit me anymore? You don't come to Milad-Un-Nabi anymore? The companion, he says, I was so ashamed and embarrassed, I could not say anything. I could not speak anything. All of a sudden, Rasulullah grabs his arm, yanks him towards him, gives him a big hug, goes into his ear, and he says, oh my companion, I will never ask you about your camel again. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. My dear brothers, take this message home. Learn the adab of Rasulullah. Teach the adab of Rasulullah. Beget the respect of Rasulullah. Teach the respect of Rasulullah. Love Rasulullah and teach others the love of Rasulullah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless Amir Bhai for creating such a mahafil. I encourage all of you to have this on a weekly basis, monthly basis. Windsor should become the forefront in the stand for the Milad of Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wasallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He give us Jannah in the neighborhood of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Ameen. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.